representing Key Stage 2. And interestingly, we've got representatives from Luton, Slough and Leicestershire music hubs, which is great actually, so representing quite a large swathe of kind of UK music. Two things that we thought we'd like to change. The first was we would like it if teachers in schools saw music as being as beneficial as something like sport, and not something which is a challenge to what they're doing in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. We also would like to see more engagement, like to see engagement being something which is valued rather than just continuation of a musical activity. So progression onto excellence, rather than just the child keeping going with the musical activity. And we saw the need to challenge kind of low expectations and low aspiration as a way of facilitating that progression.
Great, thank you. So progression there. And that was Key Stage 2.
We did talk about, we didn't discuss barriers, we did talk about the first steps that we could take to facilitate this. And we thought that a really good way to do it would be to encourage kind of peripatetic teachers in schools to identify talent, and not to be afraid of saying this is a talented child who actually might need to go kind of outside of our context and go to another place where they could get specialist support to really kind of to really shine and make the most of their skills.
So we did touch on barriers. We talked about money, not just for ethnic minorities, but also white working class parents.
Did you say money?
Money being the barrier because of the welfare reforms. Parents not getting free school meals, so they would drop out and getting assistance maybe locally. So we did touch on that in our discussion.
Okay, at this table we were looking at community, and in terms of the changes that we felt needed to happen, we talked a lot about within an organisation the fact that there are often departments work in silos, and actually what we need is better joining up between, say, education and the artistic programmes, so there is that ability then for the education and the community teams to actually influence how the artistic programme then makes sure it's actually doing the work needed to reach out to communities. Alongside that there should be the ability to kind of influence the leadership and to support the leadership so that they actually feel empowered and actually able to value why change is needed. They can see that the benefit of change, and the leadership from the top is felt to be very, very important in that sense. We talked a lot about also in increasing and diversifying the kind of musical offer, so it's not just the single kind of genre that we're all working with. And actually somebody within our group was representing the world music sector and saying actually there needs to be, the rest of the world is changing, but within music education there is still that overemphasis on the kind of classical tradition, and we need to be able to move away from that. And in terms of barriers, we kind of reflected what you were saying really about money, funding. Funding seemed to be the biggest single barrier, the thing that's really holding everything back. We talked about how organisations, particularly smaller organisations, could join up a bit to kind of increase their capacity and their critical mass, and that in itself could help unlock funding, but it was seen as a major challenge for small organisations.
And was that leadership your key action, the sort of...
For change?
Yes.
Within an organisation, yes. It has to be supported from the top, but it has to be the whole organisation working together. Change won't happen if the organisation isn't behind it.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Where next? Shall we stay? Let's go over here.
Okay, we were talking about early years in Key Stage 1, and one of the main barriers really we were coming up against is at that young age it's a lot to do with parents rather than the children themselves, because they're getting all sorts of stuff within the schools. So we were talking about what barriers parents thought about, so whether it was a money issue, whether it was going into a different setting they weren't used to, a different building, things like that. And we spoke quite a lot about ways of making it easier for parents to access high quality music resources, music education, ways of supporting them if they had a particularly talented child. So we're talking about potentially having online resources, so the access is easy to get to and to find out about what's going on and what their child could get access to. and steps towards that. I mean, we were talking at both ends really, at that very early kind of early years, nursery level, how to get parents on board, how to make them realise why learning a musical instrument, being involved in music is a good thing, and also then at the sort of top end, if a child is showing sort of particular talent, how to help them access that high-end National Children's Orchestra or other organisations, awards and things like that. Anything else you want to add?
Terrific. Again, sort of an issue around identifying challenge and signposting the routes to being able to nurture that. I'm going to come to this table here. Middle one? Thank you. You're all volunteering, I can see it. No, not me. If I shrink.
We had a very thorny conversation around what the problem is. And we felt that a much clearer articulation is needed of what the problem is and why that is a problem. So is the problem that at Key Stage 3 there aren't enough black and minority ethnic children progressing in music, or that there aren't enough black and minority ethnic children progressing in instrumental learning, or in ensemble playing, or in orchestral playing, or in classical music? And depending on what the answer is as to which of those is the problem, or all of them, why is that a problem? What is it about instrumental playing or orchestral music or classical music that means we want to see more young black and minority ethnic people doing that? And that obviously requires quite a bold statement, I think. That's quite potentially a contentious thing to articulate. So it needs a very compelling narrative creating as to why this group, this advanced network, exists and what it's trying to change. Presuming there's a problem that we do want to change, we felt that by driving up the quality of teaching in schools overall, we're therefore enabling all pupils to choose from the full gamut of musical progression routes available to them, rather than accidentally or even deliberately closing off doors to certain children based on their family background and academic background to date. I think we'll leave it there for now.
Okay. I think the problem is sort of all the above, really, in different areas. If you think of instrumentalism, music, there are challenges, I think we seem to say, over the last few networks across all of the different aspects. Naughty one. Should we go to the back? Who's volunteering?
Hello. Well, we had a good discussion, and I think the first barrier we identified was real cultural perception, really the perception of parents as to the value of a career in music. And we think that this might be linked to the narrowness of the grades and where they begin, and actually somehow the grades teach you to be to think in a very narrow way about what you're learning. It's just about the next step on your instrument. It's really very, very focused, and actually all of a sudden you're supposed to have a career. So you can play the violin now, go and have a career. And actually that's a difficult story for parents to understand. So we also felt that, so the narrowness of the grades, and that was kind of linked to a broader definition of what success was. And then connecting that with as kind of marketing strategy or promotion strategy directed at parents, so they really understand the value of having a career in music in music and what that career might look like. Because I think children tend to think it's being a pop star or something around that, but actually, as we know, it's a hugely diverse career path. So some kind of strategy to engage parents and to really explain that story of what a career in music might look like and its value to their children and their wider learning. And then also a kind of lots of small issues came up about access and enabling parents and young people to engage in a practical way if they might not be able to. So things like coaches to venues and simple things like that to help them to get over the barriers that might prevent at an early stage. But certainly that the lack of definition over what success looks like and the narrowness of the grades and actually all leading back to this perception of what a career is like. Is that more or less what we chatted about?
Yeah. Great, thank you. Our last table. I think someone's being volunteered. There, she's accepted the challenge. You were perfect, they're saying. You're the very best one. Your ideas were great.
No pressure. Hello. We were talking about higher education, and we talked about there being a drop-off in terms of entry to higher education. And I then asked the question as to whether there's blind auditions or not to enter conservatoires and so on. And I think the issue that I then mentioned, I feel so self-centered by saying that I was being volunteered. I'm a sociologist by training, and we do know from research that prejudice usually, or at the moment, doesn't work in very explicit ways. So there's some really great research on blind auditions in the US and how they've increased the representation of women in orchestras. And the point to take home here, I think, is that often, or from what we know, discrimination doesn't only or necessarily work in ways where the audition panel thinks, okay, we're not going to take on women, we're not going to take on ethnic minorities. It's much more subtle than that, and that's why it's much more difficult to challenge, and that's why something like blind auditions are really helpful, because they prevent that kind of prejudice kicking in ways, you know, the way somebody enters the room and is very self-confident and is familiar with the system, which has to do with class privilege or racial privilege and so on. And we also know from sociological research that structures help. So the cultural sector is known for not being very structured, especially when it comes to getting work. Networks are the big thing, it seems. And those things don't tend to help minorities because it's who you know, not what you know. It doesn't foster talent. And so that's something else to think about. So stuff like blind auditions might be helpful, structures, hiring processes, not just handing out work, those kind of things.
Great. Okay. Have we done all the tables? I think so. So, I mean, just quickly scanning over, we've had the profile of music in schools, progression has come up a few times in terms of finding the signposts and knowing how to navigate it, the cultural perception of what the profession looks like. Access has certainly come up, the issue of blind auditions and very subtle sort of prejudices, even from people walking through the door. Parents is another interesting subject that's come up, not just in the early years where we know that you're influencing the parents who then pass it through, but also throughout their careers, and parents having the confidence and the knowledge or gaining the knowledge about what that career really looks like. So there are lots of connections there. In terms of actions, we talked about not being afraid to identify the talent, ensuring that there's leadership in organizations, making sure that the parents are on board, making sure that we have research to really understand where the points of challenge are, and encouraging the blind auditions. So there are a number of different points there for intervention. And the last thing that we really want to do today is to try to help ourselves to move into that point of intervention, to take it into our organisations and us as individuals in our various contexts and empower ourselves to start to move to make that difference. So this phase of the Advanced Network is very much grounded in moving from just analysing the problem to starting to intervene. And Surya and the Advanced Network team have pulled together three different layers of activities, ways we can do that. Surya, do you want to come and just share with us the outline of the programme? Thank you.
I think the first thing to say for me, as I'm listening to all the feedback, is that even though we've come up against the challenges and we don't know what the answers are at this point, somewhere along the line the answers are in this room and with our colleagues, because one of the premises, for example, of Action Learning is that we do have the expertise and the solution based on all the various experiences we have. So we wanted to put together a program where we brought people together, so as I said earlier, wherever you are on the spectrum in terms of experience or knowledge or understanding, you can share your experience but also gain from others who may be that one step ahead. So we've got 3 tiers. It's in your program as well. First here is what we call Action Research Labs, and this was really for those who wanted a more sort of informal way of engaging in a way. Basically, we're going to have a workshop, a bespoke workshop for a very small group of people, maybe just 10 people, who are already either engaged in thinking about diversity. Maybe there's already a project diversity is a strong part of that you're engaged in, or you're thinking about doing something, or integrating the aspect of diversity in your work in some way. And we want those people to come together to share your ideas and actually gain instant feedback from others in the room. So instant feedback, instant questions, where you can actually have an opportunity to share and get some encouragement, motivation, clarification as well. Particularly if you're developing a new idea. But also if you're already embarking on an idea as well, it's just going to give you, we hope, that kind of opportunity to say, this is where we're at, this is what's going on, where next. Part of that as well, so maybe hopefully 10 people gather in a room. We haven't identified the date yet for that, but we'll let you know. We then want to, out of those 10 people, 10 organisations or individuals, we want to invite 3 organisations to basically work with us over the course of a year. And that would mean that those 3 organisations or projects would have one-to-one consultancy from our team. So we can look very specifically at what's going on in your project, but also then share learnings, share questions, share experiences with the wider network online and at our large final event that we'll have in 2015. So it's kind of following an idea through and collectively learning from that idea and getting the support from us individually to do that. Okay, so that's the Action Research. The Action Learning sets you've heard quite a lot about already. We'd like to have 4 sets across the country, 1 outside of London, which are facilitated. They'll be facilitated by Action Learning Associates, and Di is going to be one of the facilitators over there. And they're going to be administered as well by Action Learning Associates. It's quite a task to bring together lots of individuals and venues. So we've got an expert team in doing so. So really, if you're interested in that, what you've got to do is let us know you're interested and basically show up for the meetings. Basically, there'll be 5 meetings across the space of a year. So we hope to start them by the end of March or April. And there'll be basically a 3-hour meeting 5 times between now and 2015. So roughly every 2 months there'll be a meeting with peers. And it was really interesting, some of the questions that were being, and some of the comments and thoughts that were coming out of the round tables, because I think this is a stuff of what we'll be looking at, what we'll be working with. No one at this point is saying, well, we've got the research that's kind of framing things and helping us think about what some of the issues are, but really we are the ones who's going to be kind of bringing that alive for our experience and saying, actually, this is what we think success looks like in this context. Or with this particular set, we're focusing on progression in secondary schools and looking at talent and really asking the relevant questions around that. So 4 sets, 5 meetings every 2 months, 3-hour meeting. The venues are central in London. There'll be Central London. Barbican and Guildhall are sponsoring one of the sets, and Royal Academy of Music are sponsoring 2 of the other sets in terms of having their events there at their venues. There is a small charge for that, simply to help cover administration. We want to encourage you to think and take action. So the fee is £99 if you sign up by the end of this week, and then after that it's £130, and that will go towards helping with the administration of the sets. And then the research, the general research, as you heard from Graham and Beverly, the research is carrying on. Last time, as you heard from Beverly, there was lots of focus groups, lots of individuals. We'll probably we'll be doing that again, but in a different way. So if you're interested in the research, I think they just get in touch with us. If you've got a story, if you want to contribute to our blog online, there's lots of different ways to be involved
in this phase. So action learning sets, and that is 5 meetings across the year, working with a trained facilitator. Action research, which is coming along to an afternoon workshop where you get the chance to share your project idea or your project that's happening, get instant feedback, and then we'd like to invite 3 projects or 3 ideas to work with us over the year and get some one-to-one consulting support from us, and then share any learnings a bit wider.
That's terrific. I mean, I think it really embraces the idea of helping ourselves to go to the next stage, to actually move it into something where we can be supported to make change, make a difference. So you're absolutely gagging to say, how do I get involved? I'm sure you are. And if you look on your tables, there's a sort of blue shaded form. There we go. There's a blue shaded form. So if you'd like to follow up with the action learning set, please do fill in that form. We just need to capture your key information. There's a second form on the table, which has got an orange, thank you. Yeah. And this one, if you'd like to take part in the action research to gather for hopefully around 10 to really follow through a project in detail, then please would you just put your details on this form so that we can reach you, yeah? If any of this goes way above your head, don't worry about it, just contact us via the Advanced Network blog. But we'd really love to get your input into this next stage. We want to make sure that it starts to be concrete action, and that the ideas and the energies that you have when you leave this room full of collective willpower and you go back into your individual organisation, you don't feel isolated, but rather you know that you continue to be supported on the next stage of the journey.
And I think the last thing to say for me, well not the last thing, but one thing I want to say as well is that it doesn't have to be a conceived, already formed idea for the action research. I think it's really important because part of the challenge of diversity is actually integrating it to what one already is doing and thinking of creative ways and effective ways to do that. So it's really important that in a way you are already working in diversity because you're working in diverse communities. So it's about thinking about how your practice can be improved, and that's one of the key areas.
Happy to take any questions if there are questions, but it's also important to allow time for the conversation within the room. So if there are any immediate questions, we're happy to respond. If not, we have, 2.
Yes, some of the presentations that was done earlier, I don't know how everybody was, but I couldn't see them at all on the screens. So how are we going to be able to access them, to absorb the information that was discussed and share it? That was my
The slides and the research will be online.
Okay.
Yeah.
a final task really. I'm Valerie, I'm evaluating the network over the next year, and just to kind of capture something about today, it would be really helpful if, before you go, there's post-its on all the tables, just write the one thing that you got out of today, and just stick it on that blank A4 with A3 paper over there. That would be really helpful just to gather up these things. So, thank you.
Any other questions? We are going to. Is that a question?
Is there a list of clarity about what the subject matter of these actual sets is, or is that completely open and to be decided?
The active learning sets, the focus will be about improving diversity, but the way that you look at that might be through your own personal leadership, the barriers that you encounter, or what you want to do, what needs to change in your organisation, or trying out any brilliant new idea you've got in this area. So it's not that there'll be specific topics, it will be that the expectation of membership is about promoting and increasing diversity, but the particular way that you come at that will be from your own starting point.
Yeah, it's going back to, thank you, Di, it's going back to what's the next natural step for you and your context. What we will ask is that you do, we would like people to write their aims at the beginning, so you'll have something that helps you reflect on your individual organisational aim, even a sector-wide aim. And then we will follow that through. So that's how we will sort of monitor, if you like, sort of development within the sets. On the website, there's information there already about it, so you can check our website, and there's also you can also apply online too. So that's there, and we'll probably put up at some point some questions that we thought of that might be interesting to think about how it might work in practice.
So really, thank you very much for your time, ideas, and as always, the energies of this afternoon. I'd just like to say thank yous, really. Thank you very much to Paul and to City Hall for hosting us in your living room. Thank you. And to the Advanced Network partners, to Christina, who's always working away behind the scene and a little bit shy, but quite dynamically forward. So yes, thank you very much. I want to also thank our sponsors, GLA for today, the Royal Academy of Music, Senior Royal Academy as well as Junior, and Barbican and Guildhall for helping with the action learning sets. And of course, we wouldn't be here without the funding from Youth Music, who I think definitely took a bold step as well in doing like this. They wanted to support the sector to such a resolve and to find solutions to its own questions. So thank you very much to Youth Music today as well. So yes, thank you for your time, your energy, your thoughtfulness. And I really look forward to working with you over the rest of the year. Get in contact via the Advanced Network email or online if you want to talk anything through, if you're not sure which route might work for you in your organisation. And do get in contact, and we're very happy to have a conversation. Thank you.